Welcome to Real World, Real Talk with Dr. D.Z. Cofield. The show represents captivating conversations and insightful information to encourage and inspire you with all you need to become the best you can possibly be. And now, your host for Real World, Real Talk, Dr. D.Z. Cofield.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Real World, Real Talk. I'm your host, Dr. D.Z. Cofield, and you're listening to your member-supported public radio station, your number one source for jazz and more, KTSU 90.9 on the FM dial, KTSUradio.com on the World Wide Web, and the Real World, Real Talk podcast network. Happy New Year to everybody. Man, you have crossed over. You have made it. It is January the 2nd, the first Sunday night in the new year. And man, God knows, I don't know about you. You know, I remember when we were back in 2019, you remember how we were, man, just looking forward to 2020. We was like, man, put 2019 in the background. And man, folk were prophesying over folk, talking about, man, this is going to be your year of increase, not decrease. You're going to be the head, not the tail. And then COVID hit in March. And man, folks started wanting refunds on those prophecies. They were like, man, 20 has been a hot mess. We thought we were going to get through it in 2021. And man, listen, we're still dealing with COVID and the aftermath and the ramifications of COVID. Even today, many churches have shut down their in-person worship services again. Some have basically said we're going to delay coming back together as a corporate body. And, you know, it's just tough, man. It's just tough when you have people who are getting sick and you have people who are dying of the Omicron variant. Primarily those who are not vaccinated are the ones who have succumbed to the disease. But people who have been vaccinated are dealing with the variant to varying degrees. Some are getting extremely sick. I've talked to some who said, man, it's the worst, and they have been vaccinated. And then there are some who have been asymptomatic. But that's what the doctors told us, right? They told us if we get vaccinated, if we get the booster, it would alleviate many of the symptoms and would help ensure that we would not succumb to the greatest side effect, and that's death. And so, again, we want to relay and send our support for the message of the CDC to get vaccinated, get your booster shot, physically distant as much as possible, wash your hands, wear a mask. And, you know, there are some states that are not doing it, some states that are practicing it, some individual businesses are. Just make sure you take care of yourself. We're looking for a rise in this variant coming out of the Christmas holidays. We had to make adjustments in our family because we have planned a Christmas morning breakfast, and we had picked names and we were going to exchange gifts and the like. And several people contracted the variant, and so we couldn't get together. And so it made Christmas a little different this year, really a lot different this year. And so we're going to see numbers rise coming out of the Christmas holidays. And if you're like many people, for the New Year's Eve celebration going into New Year's, man, people were gathered on top of each other all over the world, not just the country, all over the world, back on planes, traveling back home. And so we're going to see, I think, a spike in the variant and its impact on our society and in our community in the coming weeks. We saw the last 2 weeks a 746% increase in COVID-19 cases, the Omicron variant in particular. And those numbers are higher in other cities. In New York City, some 900% in New York. Puerto Rico is some 2,800, I believe. 2,800% increase. And so, you know, people are suffering all over the country and all over the world. And we certainly want to keep in prayer all of those who have been adversely affected. Now, this first Sunday night of the new year, really the first month, I always like to try to set a good tone and give you good information just on how to live the best life you can live. If you're like most people, you have some kind of New Year's resolutions. You see the changing of the year as a changing of a chapter in your life, and you're going to make some changes. You're going to do some things differently, and many times those resolutions don't last more than a month or two. Today, we want to help you think through some long-term intentional changes, not accidental, intentional. And one of the phrases that I am definitely going to adopt this year is that a mess up is not a reason to give up. Now, you're going to hear me mention that throughout the night with my guests, but a mess up is not a reason to give up. As we are pressing, it doesn't matter what it is, whether you're trying to lose weight or get healthier or stop smoking or read your Bible more, get closer to God, whatever it is, you want a better marriage, whatever it is. Here's what I need you to know. You're going to mess up somewhere along the line. Somewhere along the line, you're going to fall short. And I want you to know a mess up is not a reason to give up. Typically, when we mess up, we're like, you know what? Forget it. I can't do it. It's not going to happen. No, a mess up is not a reason to give up. Let me introduce our guest today. She is a repeat attender here at Real World Real Talk. I'm happy to welcome author and motivational speaker, my sister from another mister, Sister Alfreda Lee. She is a native Houstonian. Energetic, positive, fun, and enlightening are just a few adjectives to describe this beautiful woman inside and out. She is a trendsetter within her community and passionate about pulling the average mindset to great. In 1997, she earned her Bachelor of Arts in Communication from the Texas Southern University, right here on this campus, with a teacher certification from St. Thomas University. She taught passionately for over 10 years in Houston and Fort Bend ISD. In 2011, she earned her master's in counseling degree at Prairie View A&M University. Sister Lee leads the women's ministry of the Greater Vision Church, where her husband serves as pastor. The ministry inspires and empowers women in the areas of entrepreneurship, health, and education. The ministry has a large umbrella that encompasses a mentoring program for young girls K through 12. She is committed to impacting the lives of any person she comes in contact with, and she is a positive role model for her children and other women. She's a proud member of the Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. And if you are a listener of KTSU, you hear her on a daily basis with her amazing voice, motivating people through her inspirational moments. You might recognize her as the Great Coach. And I'm excited to have the Great Coach with us on today. Join me in welcoming to Real World Real Talk, Sister Alfreda Lee. My sister, how you doing?
I'm wonderful. Thank you for having me, and Happy New Year.
I know, Happy New Year. I don't know how long we can say it. Yeah, but listen, it's January the 2nd, so we sure can say it right now and be within etiquette and protocols. How are you doing? How's your family survived COVID and all of that stuff since the last time we talked? So much has been going on. We've seen each other in passing, but since the last time you've been on the show with me, what's going on? How are things at the church, and how are things in your family?
Things are well. Thank you for asking. Since the last time we spoke, I contracted COVID. I was positive for COVID. And just on the heels of that, the last few days of the 2021, my husband was positive for COVID. So, of course, we did the things necessary to do prior, actually, because I felt like I was doing everything right. I got the vaccination. I got the booster. We wore the mask, and still it happened. And so I'm just grateful that we actually, got vaccinated, because you just don't know otherwise. What we do know, actually, because we had over 700,000 people die. So, we actually do know.
Did you have bad symptoms, or were you relatively asymptomatic?
I was coughing. I
Okay.
coughed a lot. My daughter, and teenagers, she was in and out of the house with friends, and she got it from a friend's father who they said just had a cold. And she came home and she had a fever. And that particular, maybe a couple of days later, she did my hair, and then I got it, and most of it was just coughing, but it
Yeah.
was a different cough. It was like I felt it deep in my chest.
Wow.
So that was different for the family.
Yeah.
And
Now,
so this time with my husband, different because I told him he treated me like the leper. I couldn't walk around, I couldn't do anything. I was locked up in the room. But I didn't treat him that way. And then now the CDC has it where 5 days and you're out.
yeah.
So
Now, how long have y'all been married?
uh 25 years this year in
Oh my God.
2022. Yeah.
Wow. So yeah, that's amazing, because I knew your husband when he was single, and he was a student of mine at the Bible college. And so
Mhm.
man, what a blessing it is to see how God is using you all at the Greater Vision Church to impact not just that area, but our city. So you're the great coach. You always give us these great motivational, inspirational thoughts and stories and anecdotes, and you weave in those stories and anecdotes spiritual principles and truths to help us live better lives, to make us feel better, to help us see the world better.
Yeah.
So as we're approaching 2022, and I know you are a student of people, I know you are a people watcher, I know you are a lifelong learner. What are some of the things that you see going into 2022 that we want to make sure we hold on to? And what are the things that we need to make sure we leave in 2021? How can we make sure that
Mhm.
2022 is the best year possible? Because, for me, I think as a pastor and as a leader, I fell into the trap that many people did early on, waiting for COVID to end
Mhm.
so we could go back to our normal life.
Mhm.
And now this thing is now going to be 2 years in March, and normal, I think, is far behind us when I'm looking at how things are changing around our country. And some people took advantage of the 2 years. I've heard great stories of people
Mhm.
who taught themselves how to play the piano, who taught themselves art and the
Mhm.
like, and they really were productive over the last 2 years. Some people treaded water during the last 2 years, and some people regressed over the last 2 years.
Mhm.
How can we start this journey to moving forward in this new normal that we are facing, or next normal, as some people would call it?
Uh well, for me, I'm very intentional about everything that I do, and I would want your listeners to be intentional as well. And as you stay, it's gonna wait this out maybe 1 month, and
Right.
now we're 2 years in. And I think in some ways we became complacent with first we were very diligent. Okay, we're gonna wash our hands, we're gonna wear our mask, but somehow I don't know how we always get this convenient amnesia that we forget that we really have been in a pandemic where we're supposed to make sure we're sanitizing and all that. Do you remember when we go into the grocery store and it was just normal, just going inside the store or
Sure.
going inside the gym, and you never thought about washing your hands and cleaning the cart? I think that we have to continue to be intentional about that. Like, continue to hand hygiene, continue to wear your mask, continue to go in grocery stores and not feel so safe, and be not, we don't want to be paranoid, but we have to make sure that we're doing our part.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that I think that we have to do just as responsible citizens, to just do our part in that part with sanitation.
Yeah. I think what's interesting is as you're talking, this issue of intentionality
Mm-hmm.
is something that I think we need to focus on in every aspect of our lives. I think even prior to COVID, a lot of people perceive things as just their fate, as just their destiny, and
Right.
they didn't realize that if they were intentional, they could make a change
Yeah.
in their life. I was just thinking about a a hip hop rapper who is now in his 50s, if not early 60s, who was talking about the death of those hip hop legends that were friends,
Mm-hmm.
and he made the statement that his diabetes was high, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he realized that even though he has a family history of diabetes, that he could do something about it. And
Right.
so they decided to start doing something about it. So now he and several other of his friends have been calling each other, checking on each other, holding
Yeah.
each other accountable. Hey, man, did you walk? How you been eating? What you've been doing? And being intentional about addressing that issue in his
Mm-hmm.
life. What for you do you see as the role of being intentional across the board for people who are listening when they think about being successful in 2022?
Well, I think about, as you were, there's so many things that was going through my head. I want to make a point about what you said with him holding his brother accountable. I think it was Patti LaBelle that all of her sisters, I believe, passed of cancer, and so she started to change her eating habits and doing things intentionally to take care of her health. And so that was a very good point. One of the things I forget your question, but
Well, just the importance of being intentional
intentional
in every aspect of your
in,
life.
in every aspect. I'm thinking about before COVID, we were just so busy doing whatever we were doing. And when we had to be in the house with our husband, with your wife, some people were very uncomfortable with that. I
Mm,
thought that was kind of odd. Um, but it's because you're passing by each other all the time, and then you don't take that intentional time to make that person a priority. If we could do that, I know for me, I am big on, if we're having dinner together, put the phone down. I just think that we need to set intentional time for our children, set intentional time for our spouses, set intentional time to talk, and then be prepared when we're thinking about our kids. Be prepared to hear some things that you're not ready to hear,
yeah.
or some things that you're not prepared to hear. Sometimes you have to talk about depression. Sometimes your kids may talk about some mistakes or some difficult things that they're going through. The intentionality is to take time to listen, take time to be very present. I think, just kind of was living life and not focusing in on what the needs were and what the needs are for the other individual. Just taking time to listen.
Yeah.
We don't do that. We're guilty of not doing it. I'm not going to say we don't, but we are guilty of not taking quality time for our family, for our friends. Before COVID, we just was doing things kind of haphazardly, and I think now I'm just so conscious of caring for family and caring for friends. Just that I think in Hanukkah, one of those days is just kindness, just being polite,
Yeah.
just loving.
Yeah. If you're just tuning in, you're listening to Real World, Real Talk. I'm your host, Dr. DZ Cofield, and you're listening to The Choice, your member-supported community station, 90.9 on the FM dial and KTSUradio.com. My guest today is Alfreda Lee, the great coach. So as you're thinking through not just your family, one of the things I've been challenged to do is to be kinder to myself. I've just become so much more cognizant of who I am and what I need to do in order to function at the best level that I can. And, you remember that old commercial, when the person pops themselves in the head and says, I should have had a V8, and I'm sitting there popping myself in the head, like, what have you been thinking about?
Yeah.
What in the world are you doing? And just some really basic, simple things have just made a major, major difference in my life. We talked in preparation for the show. Let's talk about some of the things that you are seeing that you want to encourage people to do as we move into 2022, both for themselves individually and as a family as well. What are some things that you're looking for people to do, you want to encourage people to do in order to have the best 2022 they can possibly have?
Well, when you spoke of the V8, I thought about when we're on the plane, we hear it all the time. Don't try to take care of somebody else until you put your mask on.
Right.
And that's what I thought about with self-care. It's again, being intentional about caring about yourself. And some people would say that it's selfish, but I think it's really important that we just take a moment to take care of ourselves. And I know what I do. I'm so sorry. My husband just sent me a text and said, I miss y'all. But what I do for self-care is take time just for Alfreda. I'm making an appointment to make sure that I've taken care of my breast exams. I know many women, we take care of other people so much that we forget about ourselves, but we can't fully take care of someone else if we're not in good health. And good health is not just our physical body, but it's also our mental state.
Yeah.
Sometimes we can be so overwhelmed. And of course, pandemic and all can cause us to have anxiety. Some people have been in depression for a year or just during the time of politics in America. And on the heels of Ahmaud Arbery and the gentleman here in Houston,
George Floyd.
George Floyd.
Yeah, Breonna Taylor.
That was overwhelming, and it still is. Just the thought of our Black men being subjected to so much anger in America, but we have to take care of ourselves and have to take care of our mental wellness. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, just sit down, just listen to music. I know we talked about that. I don't know if it was before the show, just having that melody in your mind and in your heart, or just meditation, that quality time by yourself, making a personal appointment with God alone, just having that private time. I know for me, just to shut the television off. I know a lot of times my kids say, how do you just stay in a room with no noise? I said, because I have a lot of noise in my head. It's enough going on that I just need to take that time to relax. And you just really don't realize, just turning off the television, turning off your phone, it really awakes something in you, and you can really hear your own thoughts. You can hear from God. You can uh, get revelation. You can learn some new things, like you said with art. I literally learned how to how to do my own lashes. So now I can save $15 and I can do it myself. But it's so important just to relax, chill
Yeah.
out. It's okay to just be quiet. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like some people think you have to talk all the time. You don't. You can just sit back and relax. Just go outside. When I was dealing with COVID, I literally had to go out of my back window because it looked so beautiful and I didn't want to hurt anyone else. So I went outside and I literally just heard the birds singing. And
Wow.
you don't pay attention to that until you're you're forced into it.
Hmm.
But let's not have to be forced into self-care, because it's so important. And that meditation time is so important.
Yeah. We were talking off air and you were talking about your meditation routine. And I wanted you to share that if you would with our listening audience, because you said it's something that you do every day.
Every
And
day.
as a person of faith, as a person who's in the public eye, as a person who serves people, supports your husband, and you have your own ministry, in that ministry. Talk about the importance of meditation and what that routine is.
Mm. You know, I hear people say,
And let me ask you this, when as you talk about that, because sometimes people will say, you know, I want to meditate, I want to slow down, I don't know what to think about.
mhm,
I don't even know how to
mhm.
get started. So if somebody is listening right now and they said, okay, how do I get started meditating? Like I is because it seems like it's a waste of time.
It is not a waste of time, and you start being silent. And a lot of times when you pray, people tend to start saying, I, they start praying for things. I don't want to say what those things are because I don't know. But what I start to do is I start to think. And I really, when I first started years ago, someone said, take 1 minute, and you would think that that's really short. Take 1 minute and just start thanking God for everything. And before you know it, that minute it has become 5 minutes. Or for the beginner, the emergent person in this, it might start out, you'll learn that you'll say thank you for this and thank you for that, and then you'll go into asking, uh 30 seconds into your thankfulness. But as you mature into your meditation or evolve in your meditation, it will become easier for you to be thankful, and before you know it, for me, because I'm emotional, I'm consumed with joy and consumed with emotion and tears of gratefulness. It's something to really thank God for health.
Hmm.
I mean, we know so many things are going on in the world, but to just have your health, or just to have your mind, just to have peace. The Bible says, early will I seek thee. And when you seek him wherever, whatever time, but for me, that early morning is just something about that quiet time. So I would say, I kind of went around it, but I would say first start with giving thanks. And then you will go from giving thanks to perhaps the Lord giving you, for me, individuals. Like in my prayer time, names just start popping up in my head,
Mm.
and needs begin to pop up. And I start thanking God for healing this person, or blessing this person's marriage, or helping this person's career, giving people a sound mind. It's so many things to pray for. But in my meditation time, I am a true intercessor. I begin to pray for others. And what's so important and just amazing about praying for other people is God then starts to bless you when you're not even thinking about asking him for anything for yourself. He's doing it anyway.
Yeah.
Uh, and that's such a wonderful feeling. If you can start this year off tomorrow morning, just set aside a time. It could be 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock. Don't go to your phone, to social media. Just quiet yourself and begin to thank God for everything.
Yeah.
And the Bible tells us, in everything give thanks.
Yeah.
For this is his will concerning us.
You know, I've noticed for years I worked the graveyard shift in a former life, and
Me too.
the quietness
Yeah.
of that fourth watch of the night, that 3 a.m. to 6
Yes.
a.m. time,
Yes.
it's like the whole world shuts down.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the 9 to 5 world, the 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. world is still sleep.
Yes.
And the 9 p.m. world to 5 in the morning world, that whole other world is quieting down and is shutting down as well. And there's this peace that's available there.
Yeah.
And sometimes, you know, it's not even about doing anything. It's just getting up and just, as you say, just meditating, you know, doing some things. One of the things I'm always praying about is asking God for wisdom. You know, even in the managing of staff and relationships, and you know, with my wife and children and grandchildren, just giving me wisdom so I can be the best for those that I love the most, you know, and how I can be a blessing to them. What's
Yeah.
something else that you are encouraging people to do as we move into 2022?
I would say my last point is to live on purpose. Let everyone you know that you care about, that you love and appreciate them. Many times I saw someone just recently at an appreciation service. They said people send their love at appreciation services, but at the memorial service, it's full of people giving flowers to the person that's deceased, and unfortunately, they're gone. So I would really encourage those that are listening to live on purpose, loving on purpose, being kind on purpose, caring on purpose, and send your husband a text during the day and tell him how much you appreciate him. Especially our Black men, we don't hear that enough. Our Black men need to know how much they're loved and how much they're appreciated. It can be simple, just a quick text to say, I love you. I appreciate you. You're doing a great job. We don't hear it enough. And so I would just encourage the listeners to love on purpose.
Yeah, I think what's interesting is, to me, when you live on purpose, it is easier to identify progress. And it is in identifying progress that you can find encouragement, right? Because I'm going back to now that initial word that we used when we first got started, being intentional.
Mhm.
And I want to live on purpose. I want to fulfill my purpose. One of the things that I did most recently was begin to think about my retirement and think about what my transition is going to be. I don't plan on, nor do I have a desire to die in the pulpit. And so I'm thinking about, and I was praying about, God, what do you want me to do next? And, two things that I have loved doing for many years. One is teaching. And when I say teaching, not in a church setting, but in an academic setting, college, seminary, graduate school setting. And the second thing is working with churches and consulting with churches and pastors and helping them to find new life in their congregations. And so I just decided, I said, you know what? I've been doing all this reading. I've been doing this writing, all this thinking on this subject for years, over 30 years. And I said, man, I need to get a certification in this. I wonder if I can get a certification in this. And so I found a certification program. I found two.
Good for you.
I decided to do it. I did it, and man, just loved it. When I got through, I had to have my exit interview to, have my certification conferred. And it was so interesting. I'm thinking it's going to be an hour-long, examination. I've got all the books out. I've got my notebook out. I've got all these notes. And the guy starts talking to me. And after about 25 minutes of us just talking about different things, some of them related to the subject, he said, man, you should be writing on this. He's like, yeah. He said, listen, he said, man, I really have enjoyed talking to you. I will let them know that you have more than passed this certification. And you're
because you have a wealth of information, honestly.
Right. But for me, it was so encouraging, because I felt like you probably felt when you started writing your book, and when you finished your book, Be Great. By the way, if you don't have that book, you want to pick it up. When you finish writing it and you're like, and you kind of woosah,
yeah,
go, man, mission accomplished,
Yeah.
And for me, it's kind of like, okay, you got to get that out of your spirit. Like God has put that seed in you. It's germinated. It's time for the harvest. Now let's get ready to move to the next thing. And it was just such a blessing and such an encouragement for somebody who's listening right now. I really want to encourage you to make this the year that you really decide to live on purpose. Now, here's one of the things that I've learned, and Sister Lee, I want you to comment on this.
Okay.
Everybody doesn't identify, nor will they support and encourage you in you living on purpose. It's almost like some people benefit from the confusion, the chaos, you living beneath your potential. Many times I think it's just misery loves company.
Yeah.
Have you found the same thing?
Absolutely. Gloom and doom. No, let's be happy.
Yeah.
Let's be happy. It's okay. It's okay to be celebrated, and it's okay to celebrate someone else. Please don't let's move away from the mindset of unhappiness, or we have to live beneath. We don't have to. We're to live a life of abundance, and we don't have to wait until we get on the other side to live with abundance. Okay, so it's okay. It's okay to live life on purpose, to get all you can, and then share that. Don't can all you get, but share it with someone else. I love how you say you are whoever shared with you that you needed to write a book, because you have a wealth of information to share. I know my husband, you're his mentor.
Yeah, no, that's my guy.
Yeah. And so I appreciate you for what you give. You just a wealth of information. And even when we were first married, I don't know if you remember you sharing this book, His Needs, Her Needs,
Yeah, yeah,
with
sure.
him.
Yeah, yeah,
And because I think he came to tell you something about me. Who knows what that bad thing was? And
yeah.
you shared that with him. And ironically, everything happens for a reason. He now uses that book for every counseling session he has for married couples.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. I just think, this past week I saw the story of a young lady who at her highest weight, she was 416 pounds.
Mm.
And she was telling the story about how her family, uh, everybody in her family's big. All of the women in her family are big. You hear things like, we're just big boned it, kind of deal, right? And she said, but the thing that spurred her to make a change, because she recognized that she was eating unhealthy. She was living unhealthy, and it really was a generational curse that her family perpetuated on the next generation. And she realized that she needed to make a change when her husband died. And she is severely overweight, and she has a little boy.
She
And it
wanted to
hit
live for
her,
him.
yeah, that if she did
Yeah.
not take care of herself, she would be gone.
Mm-hmm.
And when that reality hit her, she got involved with a weight loss program, and now has lost over 200 pounds, and
Wow.
looks amazing, has a completely different attitude. How can somebody take what has happened since March of 2020 and everything that has happened? Because it's not just COVID, whether it's loss of job or the rise in angst and anxiety and worry amongst people, uh, people not resolving past issues in their life, and stress and all of those things. How can people take a seminal moment like that young lady did and say, you know what, I'm going to turn it around, and I'm going to make my life better because of this. I'm not going to be bitter. I'm going to be better. I'm going to make a change in my life.
Let
How
me
can
say
somebody do
this. While you were speaking about her and you were saying how she would eat the wrong things and of course caused obesity and all types of other illnesses that come along with that, the same goes for what we're feeding ourselves through our mouth, not just with food but words.
that?
And so if we can learn how to turn the negative into positive, feeding our spirit man, feeding our minds, and making sure that others aren't feeding negativity into us.
Wow.
Because if you're around a lot of negativity, then that's what you will become, very negative. But if you're around positive people, if you hear positive messages, then that's going to be part of you. And so
Yeah.
I would encourage people to just start intentionally using positive things to feed your spirit, and that will be more than what you could imagine. You don't realize, I didn't realize how many people I bless on inspirational messages, just sharing a message of hope.
Yeah.
I remember pitching this. I was the reason why the great coach even happened on 90.9 is I was so tired of hearing negative things.
Mm.
And I was like, if I'm tired of it, I know other people, they want to hear something positive. And being positive can be so life changing.
Sure.
It's so much liberty in that. It feels so good. It's not a weight to
Yeah.
be happy. Do you feel any weights being happy? You're
Right.
just
Right.
happy. And that happiness it goes from one individual to the next.
Yeah.
And it makes you feel good when you can make others feel good.
Yeah.
No, when you can make others feel great.
That's right. Be great. You know, I think what's interesting about what you just said is the analogy is so accurate in terms of people and what they eat versus what they ingest or what they take in.
That's right.
And there's so many of us who are living out the negativity of the past, even
Let
though
it
it's in
go.
our past, and it's
Mhm.
not in our present. And I always say to people, you can blame somebody else for where you are, but it's your fault if that's where you decide to stay. Like,
Mhm.
you don't have to stay there. What decision can you make? What can you do to live on purpose, to be intentional about changing your life? That young lady was very, very intentional, and she was celebrated on a national news show
Mhm.
for the work that she's done, the encouragement that she has given to other people, the inspiration that she has been. And she talked about, when they asked her how she felt, she talked more about how she felt on the inside than how she felt on the
Mhm.
outside. You know, she
Yeah.
talked about just her whole view of life and her excitement about living. It just moved her. And I'm hoping that somebody in the midst of this conversation is getting this message that
Be encouraged.
you don't need somebody else's opinion
Mhm.
to claim and take back your life and to
Yeah.
take back this idea of being great. I tell this story all the time. Um, I was at the church, and a lady came up to me one Sunday. She was in her 60s, and she just told me, you know, how grateful she was that I was a pastor, and how
Mhm.
inspiring I was, and how different her life would have been if I were her pastor when she was younger. And I said, wow. I said,
Hmm.
that's interesting. I said, well, give me an example.
Mhm.
What would you have done in your life if I were your pastor when you were younger, you know, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago? And she said, oh, she said, you know, one of the things I would have done, I would have went back to school, and I would have gotten my degree. And I said, really? She said, now, Pastor, I'm not complaining. You know, all of my children have their degrees, my grandchildren, you know, I've gone to see them graduate, and I've been blessed, but I would have got my degree. And so I said to her, I said, well, why don't you go back to school
Let's
now
do
and get your
it.
degree? And she looked at me and she laughed, and she said, Pastor, she said, see, there you go playing. What would I look like, an old lady like me, going back to school to get my degree? And I said, well, let me ask you a question. I said, how old are you? And she said, I'm 60. And I said, okay, you 60. I said, that's not that old, you know.
Mhm.
I said, but you're 60. I said, okay. I said, so how long would it take for you to get your degree? And she said, I have no idea. I said, look, I'm gonna give you 5 years. I'm gonna give you 5 years.
That's it.
So it takes 5 years for you to get your degree. So in 5 years, you go to college. In 5 years, you will have your degree. You will accomplish a goal for your life, a dream for your life, and you will be how old in 5 years? She said 65. She said, what would I look like walking across the stage? You know, walking across the stage with children, you know, young enough to be my grandchildren. And I said, okay.
Right.
I said, now let me ask you another question. I said, how old are you going to be in 5 years if you don't go to school?
Good question.
And she was like, well, I'll be 65. And I said, okay. So the choice is not really how old you're going to be. The choice is what you're going to do over the next 5 years.
That's it. That's
And
wonderful.
for all of us who are listening, I need you to understand, time is going to move on. The question is, what are you going to do with the time that God has blessed you with? What are you going to do to make the most of the time that you have? As we get ready to close, great coach, give us some final words. I don't know, you may have a whole pad of some inspirational thoughts you want to give us. So hit our listening audience before we let you go.
I like what you said about time. One thing about time is that you cannot get it back. You can get money back. You can get food back, but you cannot get time back. Capitalize on the time that you have and be very intentional about the time. Be very intentional about the things that you're putting in your space. And then make sure that if you mess up, it is not a reason to give up. I'm encouraging you today to just take out time for yourself. Self-care is so, so important. Meditation is super important. You're going to commit tomorrow morning to waking up to being thankful in meditation, and then go out into the world and make it great. Be encouraged to make life great. No matter what you've gone through in this life, I know it's been hard, but life is good, and life is what we make it. And so I'm encouraging you today to make your situation great. And I'm here for you. I'm batting for you. I'm supporting you, and I'm hoping that 2022 will be a positive year for you. Be encouraged.
Great, Coach. If somebody wants to get in touch with you to have you come and speak, share, maybe they need a life coach, and I know you do some coaching as well, how can they get in touch with you?
leadthegreatcoach.com. They can go to leadthegreatcoach.com, and on all social media platforms, I'm Alfreda Lee, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate you, and please keep on giving us those wonderful, inspirational moments. I always look forward to them, and they're always a blessing.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm so humbled and just beyond myself to be here for the second time.
Yeah.
I'm very pleased. Thank you so much.
Well, we appreciate you. Oh, I'm sorry. You said what?
Love to your wife.
My
sister is Soror.
Yeah.
Lady Cofield, I love you so much.
That's my sweet tea. I will tell her.
Oh, your sweet tea. And don't forget to text her that sometime during the day, okay?
Absolutely. Listen, that girl is spoiled rotten. She will tell you she stinks. I got to hang an air freshener around her neck. She is so spoiled. Matter of fact, she's so spoiled. She even smells bad to herself sometimes. She'd be like, "Ooh, I'm so spoiled." She said, "But I love it." So
yeah. But keep spoiling her. You're doing a good job.
You know what I told? This is what I told her. This is a whole different side note, different show. But this is what I told her. I said, "I'm gonna love you so much that if I pass before you, the memory of my love for you will be greater than the love any man could give to you on earth."
Oh, that is so sweet.
So I'm working hard to make sure it gets in place.
You're doing a great job. I'm so happy for you all.
All right. Bless you now.
All right. God bless you.
Bless you. The late Vernon John said, if you see a good fight, get in it. I always add, if you don't see a good fight, start one. And there's really no better fight that you can get involved in than the fight for your own well-being, your own health, your own wellness. As we stated earlier in the show, when there's a change in cabin pressure and the mask deploy from the ceiling of the plane, you are instructed, if you are traveling with somebody who needs assistance, put your mask on first. That way you will be able to help them, but you've got to first help yourself. And for many of us, we have failed to really own what it means to take care of ourselves. We have viewed self-care as selfish. A mental health day is just that, a mental health day. Taking that moment to meditate, to relax, to reflect. Sometimes I'll just take a drive and go down and just look at some water, for an hour or two. It's worth it for me, just to be able to disengage so I can re-engage. Whatever it is for you, and make sure you stay safe, but more than anything, make sure you take care of yourself. As we go into 2022, make it the best year that you possibly can. And our guests gave us a couple of really key points. One, be intentional with everything that you do. Don't be haphazard. Don't live by accident. Live intentionally, and make sure you live with purpose in mind. Discovering what your purpose is and then living to fulfill your purpose. And I promise, if you do that, if you start engaging in some things that help you fulfill your purpose, discover your purpose and find your purpose and fulfill your purpose, man, this will be the best year you've ever had. All right. I'm Dr. DZ Cofield, your host for Real World, Real Talk. Until next week, God bless. Happy New Year. And let's make it the best year in our lives.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Real World, Real Talk. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast to be notified of new episodes every week. Follow us via social media using the @RWRTDZ username on all platforms: YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. To submit any comments, questions, sponsor opportunities, or future show suggestions, visit us online at rwrtdz.com or via email at info@rwrtdz.com. Thank you for listening, and we hope you've been inspired to be the change you want to see in the world today. Until next time, be real, keep it real, and stay real.